Hello everyone, today I'm looking at Hatred. My name is not important, but what is important is that this game is kind of okay. It's actually, I mean, it's the ultimate, edgelord game. This guy just goes on a murder spree for no reason. At a certain point throughout the game, he's like, oh, the power plant, that'd be a good place to do my killing spree. So how is, besides the whole controversy of, this Edge, game and how evil and sick and twisted it is, how does it actually play? Well, it's kind of funny that when this game was revealed, it turned out to be an isometric shooter. So I was like, oh, okay. So it's not even an FPS, which is the whole thing. Like, oh, games are making people violent now. And it's like, well, this is the ultimate, games make you want to go kill a bunch of people, killing spree. But yeah, how is the game itself? Again, it's very okay. It's not the best thing ever, but it was better than I thought. When you fire your pistol across the map, it actually has a surprising amount of range. And the way it basically works is you click in to basically fire a weapon. You can hold up to 3 weapons at one time. Usually pistol, shotgun, assault rifle, or some kind of submachine gun. There's of course other weapons you can get, carbines from the military. And so the way it usually works is you have to kill a certain amount of civilians, and then once that happens, then you have to kill a certain amount of police officers, and then you can finally get to the exit, and if you make it there, then you go to the next level. So there are areas like, a neighborhood, a marina, sewers, a nuclear power plant, train, etc. There's a lot of really interesting kind of variety, I guess, and it is generally pretty fun. The only complaint I really have about this game is that I was playing on easy, and at a certain point, I was in this level that was like a general city level, and I could not beat it. Or actually, no, is the one before that, the train level. I was playing on easy and I kept dying like a lot because they sent in the army. And when the soldiers show up, they're just really, really difficult to take out. And the way it does kind of have a nuanced healing mode or whatever you would say. So you actually do need civilians because you need to gun them down, and then when you execute them, you actually refill your health. That is the only way to get health, and it's very cheeky, and it says the only form of healing is pain. And so yeah, that's pretty funny. But yeah, this game is of course very gory, very adult oriented. It's funny because it reminds me a little bit of the original old Grand Theft Autos. And so it kind of took that idea of, this whole, Grand Theft Auto is making people into school shooters. Well, what if there actually was a school shooter simulator? Well, this is kind of it. And it's interesting they opted with that kind of older style of gameplay. Again, it's actually very impressive how destructible the environment is. All the windows shatter, and they have multiple forms and modes of shattering. There's also the fact that the walls will usually explode if you throw an explosive at it, and they'll actually crumble and you can run through it. And that's really cool. The game also has a very distinct tone. Obviously, it's all in black and white, and that really actually helps it because then the things that are explosive always show up in red, and certain objectives show up in yellow. So it's actually very clear in terms of all the things in the environment that can be interacted with or destroyed or disrupted. Those things actually pop out. It is pretty funny though in the opening, level as to what the tone of hatred is. You basically just go on this killing spree, and basically they tell everyone to go back to the police department, and you have to go to the police station and basically wipe out everyone in there. Also, what's surprising is you can also enter vehicles in this game. So the car mechanics are pretty decent. You can just drive around. There's one point you get a SWAT car, so you have to get on the back with the 50 cal and blast it open. So that was pretty cool. Again, what also I found was surprisingly creative in this game is that there are a series of side objectives for each mission. So, for example, the train station, there's this side objective where you have to make 2 trains crash. And so that's just going to a little icon on the map and basically, activating that so that the 2 trains crash, and it's kind of like a cinematic thing, but it's in the game engine. There's also a cutscene at the end and beginning of every level where it just says, my rampage is not yet finished, and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, executions are definitely really important. Sometimes you get a cinematic as well when those take place, and sometimes they'll bring out his gun to do that. You can also press F to melee, and that will allow you to hit people down on the ground and give you a kind of a free execution. But yeah, it gets really difficult at a certain point, even on easy. Later on in the game, where you just have like tons of SWAT guys swarming you, and you kind of need to funnel them through like one location in order really to take them out. Besides that, I'm not sure what a good strategy would be. But yeah, there are other ways where you can use. Now, for the train station mission, I failed it multiple times, so I basically had to get the SWAT truck lined up just right, so I could get on the 50 cal, which has unlimited ammo, and just shoot through this one kind of crack through the doors and get all the incoming officers, because it was the only way to beat it. So yeah, it's actually pretty decently hard. The environments are actually funnily very interactable and destructible, which I found very entertaining. But yeah, I'm sure this genre of game of shock value or whatever is probably going to come back in the future. There's never really a moment when a game like this isn't ever out of style. People will always try to make shocking content, I guess, and because this came out almost a decade ago, I guess maybe it's not as shocking. But yeah, playing it's still pretty gruesome, obviously, and the tone of it is pretty dark. But yeah, the game itself is so-so. And so yeah, usually when you go into a map, you kind of head towards the side objectives that usually has a lot of different power-ups or upgrades or whatever. So by doing that, you can always ensure that there might be a side objective, but there's also going to be like body armor and other things like that. It's in the train level, there's actually one level where essentially there is a bunch of some arms dealers that are doing a deal, and so if you assault them, you can take them all out and then take their stuff. And so they have like micro SMGs and flamethrowers, which are actually turned out to be very useful. Even though its range is incredibly terrible, if you can start a fire, enemies will just run into it and they will just die, and they can just walk into a wall of flame, and it's actually very, very useful. Of course, there's also grenades that you can throw. There are flashbangs, Molotovs, and also normal, fragmentation grenades. Yeah, I don't know. Overall, the game is very, okay. I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's so shocking. I'm like, yeah, it is for sure. But like once you kind of get past that initial, hump of, okay, we're just going to go murder civilians, the game itself is kind of, it just becomes a game at that point. It just becomes very all right, I guess. The other cool thing is that when you do side objectives, you get respawn points. And so that is one kind of, issue or challenge, is that, yeah, if you die in this game or in a level, you have to start the whole level over again. Unless you do a series of side objectives, then basically you're able to continue playing the game and continue fighting. And you basically get a checkpoint. So even though you might die, if you use a respawn point, you'll respawn, but all of your things up to that point will be saved. So if you only have 5 officers left to kill, then it'll be, it'll stay at that level, essentially. And so, yeah, there's not much else to say about this game. It's slightly entertaining, I guess. It still has that super dark, edgy atmosphere. And this just came out at a time, I think, when games like this just did not exist. Not to say that there is a bunch of them now, but yeah, it's just a very ridiculous, crazy game, and yeah, it's okay. Definitely not my cup of tea, I guess. But I was just surprised to see that in terms of the actual gameplay, rather than the idea of the game itself, is actually okay, and it's half decent essentially. But overall, yeah, I'm not super, into this mood or mode or whatever you want to call it, or style of game. But it's just interesting that there's a disconnect from playing the game itself and the perception of it. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I can say about this one. I will see you all later. Bye.